Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. My name is Amber Kendrick. I am Vice President, Retirement Plan Consultant at Procyon Partners and the co-founder of the WOW Collaborative. We are thrilled to welcome everyone to our virtual discussion today with Cindi Bigelow. Thank you, Cindi, for joining. And to kick off our International Women's Day, let's take a moment to cheers. I personally have with me today my Bigelow tea. I don't know if you can tell with the virtual backgrounds now. Cheers, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. Carolyn, do you want to introduce yourself next?
Thank you, Amber, and good morning, everyone. Delighted to spend this time with you today. My name is Caroline Wetzel. I'm Vice President, Private Wealth Advisor here at Procyon Partners, and delighted to be the co-founder of the Women Owning Their Wealth Collaborative. By way of context, Women Owning Their Wealth Collaborative is a virtual community of women who by day manage many different responsibilities on their time and share in the desire to network with other dynamic women and create together a safe space to talk about their finances and creating the life that they aspire to enjoy. It is through this virtual network that in 2019, primarily a group of executives and business owners said together, let's create this community. And over time, through time today, we now offer you this webinar in honor of International Women's Day. And on behalf of Amber, myself, and the WOW Collaborative, we couldn't be more excited and honored to share this time today with CEO Cindi Bigelow of Bigelow Tea. Cindi, may we invite you to introduce yourself as well?
Well, first of all, thank you all so much for inviting me to be part of this. It is a special month, and I am honored to be part of it. I would just, before I introduce myself, want to just also want to just mention the Ukraine and all the women in Ukraine right now that are going through so much, whether they're trying to take care of their families or pick up a gun and fight for the freedom of their country. So I think as Women's International Day, it's important to recognize them and what they're doing. For myself, I've been very fortunate. I'm a third generation Bigelow, running Bigelow Tea, started by my grandmother, which is so fun. It was started in her kitchen. She was an interior designer. And she lost her job during the Depression, another very difficult time, obviously. And she found an old colonial recipe and she worked on it with some friends and she created something that we call Constant Comment today. That's another story, how it got its name. And today we're the actual #1 specialty tea company in the United States. We produce over 2 billion tea bags. So 100% family, no outside finances. We do it all ourselves. Got a great group of people here that are very passionate about tea. And I want to thank you ladies for drinking your Bigelow tea this morning. So very excited to be part of this group.
Awesome. Thank you, Cindi. And before we get started, this is designed for us to ask you a handful of questions. And then for the audience as well, we'll make sure to leave some time. If you have any questions for Cindi, please use the chat feature or the Q&A box, and we'll certainly try to address those at the end. But before we get started, I did just want to talk a little bit about the International Women's Day theme this year, which is hashtag, see, that's me trying to be hip there, hashtag break the bias. So whether it's deliberate or unconscious, bias makes it difficult for women to move ahead, right? Knowing that bias exists, it really isn't enough, and action is needed to level the playing field. So we really can't think of a better female leader to have with us today, who really, in our opinion, Cindi, incorporates this kind of action both personally and professionally. So with that, I'll kick it off with the first question that we have for you. And that's, Cindi, you worked your way up through the organization, founded, as you mentioned, by your grandmother, a woman, and then in 2005, assumed the role of CEO. Can you talk to us a little bit about kind of what that experience was like for you?
Well, the journey to become the CEO was certainly a very interesting one. I started in the area of finance and in some ways, I guess I was a little naive to recognize some of the biases, which as a family member, you're going to experience them. Believe me, no one is free of these kind of situations. So whether as a family member or as a female, I learned relatively quickly that people were going to sort of treat me differently. And I had to learn right from the very beginning to kind of fight my own fights, especially, I don't know how many of you are in a family business, but I really had to learn to deal with my own issues personally with the people, develop my own relationships along the way, handle your knocks. And really, I think I learned early on to kind of identify the people in the organization that really had the knowledge, that knew how this organization worked. And I spent a lot of time from them trying to figure out what was best. I learned a lot from the individuals that I worked with that I didn't necessarily liked how they operated. And I always do say this whenever I'm talking to any groups, the people that don't treat you the way you want to be treated or act or in a leadership role they want, those are great teachers as well, because they really helped me see what I didn't want to be as I was moving up the ladder. So I kind of went from department to department, kind of learning the ropes, became sort of the troubleshooter. Made my mistakes along the way, learned to apologize, honestly. And then when I became the CEO in 2005, I had worked in pretty much every department, had a lot of what I would call successes, had a lot of what I call learned lessons.
Sure.
But when I took over as the CEO, I really, I didn't quite recognize the pressure that was going to be. I thought I'd been well prepared in all the positions prior to that. And I think I got, I guess I'll say a little confused.
Hey, it happens.
Well, here I was now, running the organization. And I think I took an approach that wasn't the natural Cindi. I think I sort of felt like I had to run through walls a little bit more, and I had to be a little bit more take no prisoners. And it really didn't go well, to put it mildly. It really had some negative reactions that was deserved. Let's start there. And I had to really, after a few years, stop, take an inventory and say, okay, wait a minute here. Who am I? What have I learned along the way here? What kind of leader do I really want to be? And I learned, again, what I thought I'd learned earlier, and that's to be able to reflect and say what you've done wrong, how you can do better, to have more honest conversations with people, to what I call circle back more and say, hey, we just had a tough meeting. Let's talk about that. Where were you coming from? Here's where I was coming from. And I really had to grow into the CEO position, even though I had, 20 years of preparation. When I finally got to that position, I really needed to learn a little bit about who Cindi Bigelow was that had led to where I am today. And today I'd like to say that, I'm sure I've still got a lot of lessons to learn, and I still make my mistakes, but I think I have a much more seasoned approach about me and a longer sort of vision of how I want to run this company and the kind of people that I want to have surrounding me. And I think that's the reason why we're still doing so well and the #1 tea company and growing like we're growing. And I'm able to hire the people that I'm hiring because they want that kind of environment. And it's in this role, I have to set that environment. I am the ultimate role model, really. So every day my behavior sets the tone for the entire organization. And it took a little while for me to learn that.
It's so inspiring, Cindi, to learn from you how, with years of experience, you additionally grew to embrace and showcase authentic CEO Cindi. Can you elaborate further on some of the opportunities and challenges you experienced both within Bigelow and outside of Bigelow throughout your career, and how you navigated them, and what maybe we can learn from them as well as we navigate our own respective careers?
Yeah. Well, I definitely, as all of us will deal with, I had definitely a lot of hurdles, whether it was internal, again, the hurdles being a Bigelow. I mean, people were going to dislike me or like me because I was a Bigelow. As a female, believe it or not, people are going to like you and dislike you because you're a female. And And I had to learn to kind of get past that. Same thing on the outside world. I would sit in boards where we're all men and me. Or I would sit on panels, all men and me. And, you know, I had to figure out what was the right way to operate in that environment to achieve success. And what is success? Success for me was it's not personal. It was the ultimate achievement of the goal that the group either knows they have or should have. And I think for me, I learned early on to focus on that goal, and whoever was in that room, bringing out the best of them to get to that place. And I think that really helped break down barriers. You know, at the same time, I had to identify who was the power broker, I would say, in the room or on the panel or on the board. And what I like to say is not let ego get in the way. Use your smarts. I mean, women are very, very clever. They're very, very smart. They see things that, you know, that they get to see that maybe not all eyes get to see, and use that. It doesn't mean you lose your passion, but you lose the ego or the emotion to achieve success. And once you start to do that, one, then two, then three start to follow, because I recognize that you're there to lift the room and to achieve goal. Now, if you're the best person in the room to do it, people will start to follow. If you're not and you see somebody better, you start to follow. I have no problem. If there's somebody in the room that's better achieving goal than I am, I'm all there to support them and help get there. If I happen to be that person, if the room decides that for whatever the reason, I'm the one that can help us get there. So I think identifying the goal, and sometimes you got to stop the room and say, whoa, what is our goal? Where are we going, right? And maybe if you're in a younger position or in a position of not a complete authority, you have to be careful how you word that, right? You could say, I want to make sure I'm aligned with everyone in this room. So what is our ultimate goal? But make sure that you get the room, their minds wrapped about where you want to go. And then as you're helping lift that room and you're helping drive to that goal, oftentimes, if you have those leadership skills, they will absolutely follow you. I mean, I've had experience after experience where my name had nothing to do with it. I was one of the only females, and within a short period of time, the room was like, hey, we want to follow you. How do we get there? Because it wasn't about ego. It wasn't about me. It wasn't about, I want to lead because I should lead. I should only lead if I deserve to lead. And you deserve to lead if you identify who's the best in the room, what are their best skill sets, and how do I achieve goal so that we're all part of that. So I learned that when I was dealing with my knocks along the way. And, you know, one of them I'll share with you. I hope it doesn't take too much time, but I was on a panel in New York with two CEOs, and the room was the goal. We were there for 400 businesses to ask us questions about business. And this particular CEO to the right of me, I'm somewhat scarred by the experience, was like, every time he spoke, he was talking about himself and what he's done and this and that. And I was like, okay. And then he kissed me on the cheek and he said, isn't she adorable? We had 400 people in the room. And my heart was racing. So I was like, okay, this is unbelievable. Stay calm, Cindi. How are you going to figure this out? And so I had to wait my turn until it was my question. And then it was my question. I made it about the room. And it was more about a coaching experience. And the next thing I know, the next person asked me the question. And then another person asked me a question. And then the guy to the left of me, who was acting initially like the guy to the right of me, started acting more like the room was the goal. And eventually, when the man to the right went to kiss me again, the room was in the right spot. I looked at him, I said, you touch me, we're gonna have a big problem. And the whole room erupted, and he ended up looking so foolish. But I also had to use what I call my skill sets and some grace in dealing with a situation that really, there'd be nothing wrong if I slugged him, but It wasn't appropriate. I'm the role model in that room, and I can get there if I get the ego out of the room, know what I need to do, take that room with me, and then put him in his place and humiliate him appropriately. So it's about really always making sure the ultimate goal is there. You're always defending yourself and taking care of yourself. But I think doing it in a way that you ultimately role modeled to everybody in the room, on the board, in the panel, about the best way to move a business, move a project, move a plan forward. Yeah. I've had a lot of knocks along the way.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Well, I'm listening to you, Cindi, and our last questions before opening up to the audience was around the theme of International Women's Day, and that's breaking the bias. And what advice, would you offer people today around, how they can identify and break the bias? And it sounds, your story right there is a good example of that. Anybody else who's on the line right now, and any advice you can offer them about how they can, identify, maybe some, and then the breaking the bias, but then also maybe some, skills that you would suggest. There's a follow-up question around some of your favorite coaches, but we'll get to that next. But and any thoughts there around the theme?
Well, first of all, there's no question it exists. It exists for women. It exists for what's your sex, what's your religion, what's your race. It's out there. I would like to say that you can make a difference, not with everyone. I'm not going to sit here and say you're going to be able to change everyone. But I personally, over my years, have seen that you are able to change behaviors by your behavior. And what does that mean? So when I'm in a room and I know someone is clearly recognizing me as a woman and therefore / maybe not on the same level as this individual is, I'm recognizing it, I'm observing it, I'm hearing what their skill sets are, I'm hearing what's important to them, and then I'll be honest, I'm using that. If you want to call it using it like a weapon, you can say using it like a weapon, but then I'm starting to recognize what's really important. And all of a sudden, when they think you sort of get who they are, you understand it, you see their strengths, you know what's important to them, all of a sudden you're part of that conversation, right? And now I'm part of the conversation, and then I can start to introduce some of the new ideas, and his guards come down because now I'm okay. I get him. And the next thing you know, you've moved the entire room and this individual. And I'll think of another panel I was on in Chicago. It was a challenging individual that I was on with. And by the end, it was like, boy, I'd like to work with you. And I'm thinking where we started from. So, it's not easy. Right. It's really not easy. It's out there. But for me, how I deal with it is I recognize it's there. And again, I figure out how am I going to get past this and get to a place where I'm going to be recognized for who I am. Right. And I can tell you with thoughtfulness and business acumen, that personal trait that women have of sensitivity and understanding what somebody's made of. I've really been able to get past so many of these situations by just really kind of understanding who I'm dealing with. So that's the best advice I can give you, is it's not going to go away. It does exist. Some you can't change, but I think there's definitely ones you can change by just how you behave. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, makes sense. As I mentioned, there was one question from the audience, and anyone else too. We certainly will welcome a handful more. One of the questions, Cindi, is who were your coaches and trusted advisors? I'm sure there's many.
I recognize. Thank you. I get asked that a fair amount, and I like to say that I learn from everyone. I really do, and I hope that doesn't sound like a cop-out, but it's truly what I do. I learn good and bad from everyone. Even my own father, who's always been one of my greatest mentors, has some qualities that I see, and I go, I don't want that. I don't want to do that. So I try to really learn from absolutely everyone. Even, if I'm in an airport. This is funny. The other day I was in the airport, and this airport customer service booth was in the middle of the airport, and they were asking, you could ask any question you want about where something was in the airport. And this individual had the best attitude I've ever seen. He was so positive that I just wanted to ask him a question because I wanted to be near this thing. So I asked him a question, and he had the best answer. It was a real question. It was legit. And he asked the best answer. It was so positive. I looked at him, I said, oh my God, you're amazing. You just love what you do. And you know what? It just exudes from you, right? So yeah, I took so much away from that. I still talk about this man. It was 2 years ago. So is he one of my mentors? Yeah, he's a mentor. I don't know his name. So I just really think that we can all every day really be a student of life. Everything from the minute you wake up. Sometimes that could be a little exhausting, but I believe from the minute you wake up to the minute you go to bed, challenge yourself to be better. Who do you like? What don't you like? What did you like that you did about your behaviors? What didn't you like that you can do better? There's nothing wrong with taking that inventory. We started off by asking about my career early on. I had to take that inventory quickly. And I remember one of the guys still works with me, head of IT, was like, if you get this detailed about everything you're doing, you're never going to move a project forward. Of course, I was insulted, but I was like, I think I need to learn from that. So even if you're taking 5% of what's put in front of you, it makes you better. So everyone needs to be our mentor, in my opinion, everyone. And then we need to recognize that we also have to be mentors. We also have to be role models. I know this sounds a little much, but I always say, like, if you're in a car and you do whatever to the next car, well, you're role modeling. If you have children or friends in the room, you're role modeling the next car. So don't forget, you're also a role model every day. And people are learning from you. You're a mentor every day, as well as you're learning from other people.
Yeah, that really resonates with me in particular. I have a stepdaughter that's 13 going on 30. So I have to realize she does look up to me, although there's plenty of times where I look up to her as well. So
it is important. It's so important. And little things count. What you say on the phone, how you say it on the phone. They're watching, they're hearing. Yeah.
Caroline, anything else question-wise that you have from your end? There's one other question too from the audience.
Yes, there's another question around any surprises along the way. As you look backwards now, any surprises that you wish you had insights around, advice around navigating before?
I think the story I share with you, and also thanks for the question. I love any question. Don't worry about anything. I'm pretty much an open book. I think the stubbing of the toe when I first became the CEO, and I hope it doesn't sound funny, but I kind of felt like I had to be like a guy, whatever that means. It's probably an insult somewhere, and I apologize. But, I just kind of came in like a bull in a china shop. I'm the CEO now. And I mean, painful lessons are great lessons, right? It was scarring and also something I'll never forget. And I think it made me a much better person dealing with the knocks that came with that behavior. But I wish I did have someone that could have helped me in that case. But with my title, I didn't really have a lot of people marching in here telling me some things. I kind of had to figure it out on my own with the reactions that I was getting. And I did. And that's why I say women, I think, have tremendous skills in that arena. But I would have really loved a coach right then and there to kind of help me through a little bit.
Sure.
Thanks for asking these questions too. And again,
they're starting to flood in now, Cindi. Watch out. You're coming in hot. Next question for you is, what advice can you give to our local youth about starting their own business? Great question.
Oh, I think that's wonderful. I say your path's going to have lots of zigs and zags along the way, and everything you do does not have to be permanent, as long as you're learning along the way. And so for me, getting out there and trying to start something new and exciting, and all the lessons you're going to learn, some good, some not so good, are just going to be great for your whole career path, no matter where you go. So if you have an idea that is different, what's going to make it different? What's going to make you unique? What's going to be your sort of raison d'etre, as my dad would say? What's your reason for being? You have to have something that really stands out, and why you, whatever you're going to do. But if you have something like that, and you can really kind of get others on board to support you, I think it's a wonderful opportunity to start your career that way. And again, it might grow to who knows what, but it might also be a great stepping stone into something else. So not easy to do, but if it's a unique idea, you're very passionate about it, don't get knocked down the first time. My grandmother, this business did not start overnight. We barely were making it. It was only after keep trying and trying and trying. And we did have something unique. Constant Comment was very different. Keep going, keep trying, keep adjusting, keep learning from what's out there to say, wait a minute, if I tweak it this way, it could be successful. So don't I've got a fun story called, I don't share it now, called when Mama moved the pony stable, when my grandmother was losing all of her enthusiasm because the business wasn't doing well.
Yeah.
But the bottom line was you just keep going, and look where we are today. So definitely try.
Sure. I think there's a couple more. Carolyn, do you want to take the next one?
Sure. And they're very much in line, Cindi, with those pieces of advice you just shared. One person asked, what is one piece of advice you would specifically tell your younger self, or one thing you wish you knew as you were just starting out?
Well, I guess what I would try to tell my younger self is, make sure you try every day, which I did. That is my personality. Make sure you try every day. Don't burn any bridges. They might, what's the old saying? They might forget what you say, but they won't forget how you made them feel. I'd make sure that I emphasized that. Because life is long, the journey is long, and you need to be proud about everything you've done. And if at all possible, don't compromise your values, and just stay true to being kind, working hard. I think that's just so important, because you want to look back and you want to feel good, even if you made mistakes. That's okay, but you worked hard, you tried to be respectful and caring of everyone around you. You were honest. Oof, that's a really important one. So that's what I would say that is important, that my journey needed to include.
I love the honest comment. It's hard, right, to speak up at times. I know, professionally in my career too.
Really.
But it's important. It's so important.
And it's important to find your own voice in how you deal with that honesty, right? Like, it's different at my age in my career in terms of, what I can say. But at the same time, you can say things respectfully. If you, as I said, you understand the room, you understand what's important to them, but you can start to learn to develop your voice. And the earlier you can develop it, the more I think you can stay true to who you really are. And it's not easy. As I said, everything I'm saying took work. I didn't just roll into this position here. Made a lot of mistakes along the way, but you have to really, you got to challenge yourself, and really learning to find that voice, Amber, is really, really important as early as possible.
Yeah, I love that.
It reminds me a bit how, outside of work, when going to the gym, right, you're exercising your muscles and you're practicing and training and doing better. It's almost like the sooner you begin to exercise that voice, the more practice you have with it, then the more capable we are for using it when and how we wish, both for ourselves and for those around us too, like any muscle.
Well, one last thing on that too, and I know timing is tight, but the other thing is timing on the honest conversation, right? Like, so, it's important if you're let's say in a heated situation, you kind of recognize, again, women have these great skill sets, we should be using them. Like, this isn't the time, but I'm going to circle back. That term I used before, a great lesson that I learned later on. I'm going to circle back and I'm going to say, hey, Fred or Jane, I think that conversation, I was a little uncomfortable, or I was a little confused, or I think maybe I presented it in a way that upset you. I'd like to talk about that. Can you share with me how you were feeling? And you give them a chance to talk first, right? About that guy in Chicago, let him start talking first. Next thing I know, I was his best friend. So, I really think there has to be a strategy. And sometimes it's also timing is a very important part of that strategy.
Well, speaking of timing, on behalf of Women Owning Their Wealth Collaborative, Amber and myself, Cindi, we would like to thank you. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your integrity and your example. It's truly a privilege to share this time with you today so that we all may learn from you, and together on our respective journeys, break the bias, embrace who we are individually and as a community, and do what we can to effect positive change around us. We thank you, Cindi, very much.
Well, thank you. That was an excellent ending. It is about positive change. So thanks, guys. Thanks for including me.
Of course. Thank you so much.
And on behalf of WOW Collaborative, thank you everyone for tuning in with us today. After today's webinar, anticipate receiving a thank you note from us on how you can continue to be informed about upcoming WOW Collaborative events. And as always, we love to learn. We're a learning culture. We'll invite your feedback around today's webinar. Thank you for your engagement. And here's to your health, happiness, and prosperity. Thank you.